Council, and we are hearing from them about their budget requests for the 2026 budget cycle. Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon, Chair. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Good to see you again.
You as well.
So, thank you for coming in to talk about this. I had a brief conversation with Representative Harrison today, just about a couple of moving parts in the budget cycle. And he mentioned this, so I'm glad we were able to piece this together. And we have the document here. So, everybody at the table, we're missing a couple of folks today just due to absences for various reasons. So I think we have the critical mass that we're going to have for this meeting. Show is yours, sir.
Well, thank you again for having me here today. For the record, again, Chris Kirkhill from the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. I appreciate the opportunity to come and identify a few things that are outside of our governor's recommended budget. Things that are identified that were additional costs to us that the council recognizes that are either initiatives that are important to us or things that we have already started to undertake. And then one-time costs and associated things that just are the operating costs of what the academy are. So if it pleases you, I'll be happy to start with what our initial proposal was and just focusing on pages 6 through 10, which identify the actual position asks that we had asked for in addition. Does that work for the committee?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will start with, there was originally an ask for 4 positions to help the council move forward with the work that we're doing. And in discussion, I'm really only going to discuss 3 that are really critical for us to be moving forward. And the first one that I'll start with is the justification for the curriculum position for someone to be doing curriculum development. And what we really found was that in our work with IADLIST, who we're contracting with in our curriculum review process, is that over a period of 3 years, even while you're identifying what is best practice and what is the best training for law enforcement to be getting, that changes over time. That changes with state mandates, that changes with societal requests of law enforcement. And so we're going to need somebody that actually takes control over what does best practice look like for police training, going in line with what we currently see for competency-based training. And moving forward, that position, we're looking at that as something that will enhance the curriculum quality as we continue to move forward. It will increase training accessibility through helping us to develop what are online programs that we can move to online training. And the hope, even in following through with that, is to improve essentially officer retention and satisfaction and providing more training opportunities for officers that might have to be able to attend training that is more remote, that doesn't have to be here at the academy. And it will also help with us keeping tabs with what we're moving forward with in accreditation of the academy's curriculum once it's done. What we look for in some of those things as well in a curriculum development person is to kind of make sure that we're following through on the investment that the legislature provided for us in this, what was a 1.5 million investment, which actually turned out to be a 1.2 in actual dollars investment, which correlates to one of the additional asks later in the one-time funding. But that essentially provides just a quick overview of the curriculum position and what we would utilize that position for. This process, again, which takes 3 years between writing, developing, piloting, and then actually seeing how it plays out in practice. We know by working with IADLIST that right at the very beginning of this curriculum rewrite, that by the time we get to the end of it, some of that curriculum is already going to change. And they are the experts at helping us develop this. So we're going to need to continue to make sure that that training remains updated and so that we remain in an accreditation status. So that is the outline of the position for the curriculum person. Is there any questions in particular on that?
Yes.
Representative
Yes.
Engel?
Did you have a particular dollar value that's associated with that position?
Yes.
We did. We had that position listed at a pay grade 25, which is essentially one little over 114,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next piece that we were looking for was justification for a head canine training position. This one's a complicated piece, but certainly well justified, we felt. So for a little historical context, the Vermont Criminal Justice Council has had training coordinator positions. We have never had a head canine trainer. We did have someone for over 20 years that was a training coordinator, but his specialty was in canine training. And that was really kind of overlooked as the amount of work that goes into specifically training, and aside from tracking and documenting that training and making sure that all of that is accountable through us and through the auditor's office. That was one of the things that was identified in our audit that was lacking because of the fact that it was essentially a two-person job that was being done by one person. And we had an assessment once that person retired from service. And the assessment that we had done from an outside firm was, in fact, just that, is that this is a two-person position, that you need somebody that can focus on the actual training of canine and what the canine disciplines are, and how that canine training also establishes what training is done out in the field and maintains compliance for canine teams throughout the state. While the documentation, which comes in from not only the trainer, but from those in the field that are canine teams, has to be maintained by us, not only within a training record, but shows that they're meeting the canine standards that have been developed through the council. So with him leaving, we attempted to try to fill that coordinator position with someone who had that expertise. And what we found was that we were not successful in that mission. And the only folks that we did have that were really applying for that training coordinator position were folks that only had a desire and a specific skill set in training canines, as opposed to all of the mandated paperwork, canine standards, and the essentially accountability on our end for that person to do, because it was almost a full-time job doing that. So what we have done in the meantime is we have contracted with a canine trainer, and we have assigned, a lot of that record keeping to other staff members here to make sure that we're keeping up with the mandated training records that we need to assess here, and make sure that we're meeting the standards that we were identified in our audit as being lacking in. So with a head canine training position, what that would allow us to do is a couple of things. It would keep the establishment of certification standards following the canine standards that were set by the state, by the Canine Committee and approved by the Criminal Justice Council. It would also reduce some of the financial burden that without that position, canine teams would likely have to go out of state to receive that training, or rely on other trainers that may not be certified in order to do the training that's required of them. And if they want to maintain their council certification as a Vermont Criminal Justice Council certified canine team, that would have to be done through a canine trainer. And without that head canine training position, those teams would be left essentially on their own to find where that training would take place, and then potentially have to leave them to go to out-of-state entities in order to get that training. That also does not include some of the things that a head canine trainer would be tasked with, which is making sure that Vermont law is and case law is followed in such things as making sure that we're not worrying about other states' entities, but what case law has already been represented in Vermont, so that canine officers would be following Vermont law in our Vermont use of force policy that is statewide. So those are things that the canine position would essentially help us with, and then provide for a long time ongoing sustainable training of Vermont's K-9 teams. Without that, there is going to be a large difficulty and a large void in making sure that those not only sustained K-9 teams that already are in existence, but new teams that we have trained last year and some that are already scheduling for this year to maintain that same level of Vermont certification for the K-9 teams. So is there any question particularly on why that has been an identified specific need?
Representative Coffin.
Yeah, just one question, because how many K-9 teams do we have throughout the state that we try to keep maintained?
Currently, we are at 27 teams right now. 2 of those teams, I believe, are also from New Hampshire. New Hampshire comes to us to receive their certification here. 16 of those are certified teams in the discipline of detection. 11 of those are certified in patrol training, and the other 16 are also in tracking and trailing their certification.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you for that. And then moving on to our last piece, which is really our justification ask for an athletic trainer position. Again, this is really looking forward at what we can do to help officers stay in this profession longer and take care of themselves better. An athletic trainer really would help us with recruits that are going through the academy, as well as level 2 training that we would utilize that position for. And essentially right now, recruitment around officers that are, well fit is left up to individual agencies and to the individual officers once they receive their basic certification here. We have a pretty significant process that they go through here. And what happens with the current contracting position that we're utilizing, because of the fact that we have never had a position like this before, we have seen a greater reduction in the amount of time that officers or recruits have to actually leave the academy to be seen for potential injuries, which sometimes are just overuse injuries or things that they might have already re-aggravated due to a pre-existing condition before they came in here. We've looked at a lot of the comparative costs just in workman's comp claims over the years, and we hope to significantly reduce that moving forward just by making sure that when folks leave here, they are well adjusted, they are physically fit for the agencies that they are going for. And the purpose would be to really have them looking at a longer lifelong wellness program for themselves. As we're doing right now, so prior to the contractor that we're utilizing, we have our training coordinators that oversee between 30 to 50 recruits at a time. They are engaged in the PT program with them. So it doesn't give 2 training coordinators that are responsible for the basic class the ability to work with individuals in that class. They're responsible for the entire class during that process. So by having the contractor that we currently have on site, we're afforded that luxury to make sure that we're not seeing injuries that we might not see through his expertise. We're also making sure that we don't push people to the point of having further medical complications. As you know, over the last couple of years, there have been folks that have been diagnosed with rhabdo, and we want to make sure that that's not something that critically impacts people or from any agency, but moving forward to something that could be really injury sustaining for them and harmful for them moving forward. So while we contract right now, by having a full-time athletic trainer position on board, we would see that future progress moving forward with every individual class, not only basic class, but they would be utilized as well in the level 2 training that goes on. And the actual cost that we came up with for an athletic trainer's position was around the pay grade 23, which is just around a little over 104,000 per year. So with that, again, I would be happy to answer any questions about why we think that's a valued position. Again, this is long-term for the state for, workman's comp claims, but also to make sure that when folks leave here and they go and serve their communities, that they're maintaining the things that they know that they should be for their own wellness, not just in PT, but also in, sleep, nutrition, mental health, all the things that we would have that athletic trainer working in conjunction with the recruits on.
Yeah, Representative Nugent.
So of these two positions, which one is your priority?
Section.
Good question. That is a high priority. Actually, all three of these are actually really high priorities. I think the curriculum position is one of importance in that we're not using a resource that was granted to us by the legislature and the governor's office for that curriculum review, and not just ending it there at that, what has actually been given to us of 1.2 million, but what is identified as 1.5 million. I think it's critical for us to make sure that we maintain our training standards and stay up to date with what is best practice for law enforcement moving forward. That being said, I think that sustainability of Vermont's canine teams is equally important to municipalities for teams that are already existing and in the good work that they do. And, as any canine team will tell you, what's the cost of finding one missing person or one vulnerable adult that is strayed away from, maybe an adult living institution or a child that's wandered away from a daycare. I mean, you can't put a price on those things, and that type of training, if we don't provide it here, will be done elsewhere and at a greater cost to agencies that will have to go out of state for that training. And again, I think I don't know that I can put a priority on which one is more a higher priority than the other two, simply because they all have value, just of differing needs.
All right, there's a hand now.
Yeah.
Is this for FY 26?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah, so
going
these are
forward. This isn't
proposals for
something
the
we're
big
trying to-
bill. Yes,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
That's correct.
All right, above and beyond the personnel requests.
So above and beyond the personnel, there are a few things that I want to keep them pretty basic, and one of them would be a one-time funding request that we have for curriculum development in the cost area of $300,000, and that figure is based on what we were originally granted for the curriculum rewrite, but never materialized in the funding of the legislature. So it was a $1.5 million ask that we were told was approved, and the granting actually ended up being 1.2. So that would get us to the end of the 3-year completion of that actual project. If that curriculum person did not come on board, that would be essential for us to complete that mission. And then the other funding, one-time funding asks were a total of a little over 700,000. And that was one time for outside of what our current budget operating expenses are. They were identified, broken down for you. That was provided to you in kind of on very short notice here. But it explains the different costs of each of those asks and what those individual pieces of ask are for. So for instance, like, red man suits, the suits that are used in use of force training, just the replacement of those, they're rather costly, but they're needed for individual scenario training. Taser training devices, the Axon, which is the company that actually produces tasers, which is the one event that the one uniform piece that's utilized by almost all agencies in the state of Vermont. Taser has come out with a new platform, a Taser 10. We have other Taser devices here at the Academy, but we do not have a Taser 10 in order to facilitate that training in our scenario building. So that's another ask of, an additional $5,100 just for that. So there, it's broken down into all of the individual itemized areas of what that $700,000 is cost covering. But all of them have different priorities that go outside of what our normal operating expenditures are for our budget.
You said $700,000, but this chart adds up to 803,000. So is there a more complete chart than the one on page 19?
It is not, the additional on the document that I did send to you, and I don't know, you may have only received it in an Excel spreadsheet, but at the very end of that document, there were four pieces that were identified that were things that, while they would be great to have, those were moving forward if we weren't able to get those in one-time funding. That's what we would be moving for in following years, asking for. So that's where the difference between that little over 700,000 and the 803 amounted to. Those were three things. One of those were a skid car system, which is designed for EVOC training, a accessible building entry via intercom system, and then an EV charging station, since we don't have one here on state grounds here, which we felt there are some agencies that actually utilize EV vehicles, and it would be nice to have an EV station at our location.
Okay, that
Yeah.
explains the
You got that?
numbers. They add up now. Thank you. Yep,
Yeah.
that's why I was questioning 803 versus 700,000.
Yeah.
So, perfect.
I attempted to send that spreadsheet to you in a PDF, and my computer locked up in the process of trying to do that. So I will get it to your committee following this meeting, just so that
Thanks.
you have that explanation that's readable for you.
I think we have it posted now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay,
And again,
so, go ahead, please.
No, I was just gonna say, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity just to provide an explanation for this committee for some of those things that go outside of what we are allowed to ask for, but actually kind of display some of the operating expenses and the things that over, the course of time have never been provided that really do enhance law enforcement training. And those are some of the things that we've had the ability to fortunately identify for you today. So I appreciate that much.
Thank you. Under programmatic needs on page 12, I see the 800,000 for one-time expenditures. Did you discuss the $600,000 in RFPs?
The $600,000 in what fees? I'm sorry.
RFPs.
Yeah, so the 600,000, what I did was in the RFPs, I eliminated that for this committee's purpose for the 300,000. Because I don't want to seem greedy, and because I'm trying to be realistic with what our ask here, but that 600 was brought down to the 300 so that we could complete that funding that we didn't get initially.
Okay, great, thank you. And are you
so-
still asking for the 8,000 in language access assistance?
We're trying to find alternative sources to try to get there, but we haven't identified those yet. But yes, additional language resources would certainly be helpful to us.
And then the $75,000 for professional development, was that covered with the curriculum development, or is that separate?
No, that was covered in the one-time ask in the 700,000.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like 300,000, 700,000, 103,000, and 8,000. Am I right?
You are correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
And yeah, so we're starting, Representative Hango, Waters Evans and I are starting to build out like a little bit more of a formalized spreadsheet with all of our budget asks. So we'll start plugging this stuff in, and then we'll start having the conversations about getting more granular with these requests in the near future. So anything else from anyone else at the table? Is that your hand?
Yes.
Is that pistol?
I'm looking at the workman's comp data for municipalities. it's
Correct.
like gonna double, triple almost, in 2024 from 67 to 219. Is it your hope that with the athletic trainer, those would go down because there'd be programs that would help in workman's comp, claims? There would be hopefully less injuries?
That is definitely our hope, yes. I asked our Director of Administration to pull those figures from workman's comp related to law enforcement. So that is related to just law enforcement. And so for our hope is to make sure that, one, that officers are receiving training in the best possible way that they can here, and we're also mitigating any of those risks for future workman's comp claims. And then as well, the training for them to move forward on their own once they leave and agencies to follow, making sure that they have that wellness program now that we've designed for them pre-academy and post-academy. So we're hopeful that that will actually impact the workman's comp claims statewide.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that I feel that that statement's probably correct, just knowing what I know about athletic trainers and their work. And it would also help your personnel with mental wellness as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
those folks exist for a reason, yes. Anything else? Representative Hooper, anything for the Criminal Justice Council and their budget request for 2006 big bill, 26 big bill?
I don't think so.
All right, cool. We'll go over the notes later. Welcome back. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in on shorter notice for us while we were trying to fill a gap in the schedule. So this was an important conversation building this stuff. I appreciate you, and we will be in touch.
And I thank you again for your time. And if there's anything in particular of interest as you go through that you want greater detail on, just feel free to send me an email and we'll get you that detail.
Wonderful, wonderful. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. You as well.
Okay, so we were not able to get any folks from Morristown. I still want to call Morristown. Like all the time, I'm just constantly, I almost said Mobile. Morristown. So we're still waiting on them. And so basically like the question that seems to be hanging is around the expanded authority for the town manager on the hiring, the firing and all that stuff, and whether or not it conflicts with any existing municipal union contracts. That's the question I have stuck in my craw right now. Because every time someone comes in, it's just a simple intern.
Do we have a legislative council who is dedicated to unions?
But yeah, sure, that's all the labor stuff, which I think.
John.
Andrew-
Yeah.
What's that?
Maybe John Gray? No.
I think it might be more Cam doing the labor.
So I wonder
so
if they would have a union.
I think the conversation's probably enough just to have with union folks. And then if they open up a bucket, that's why Tucker was hanging out too, was just for situational awareness with it. And then if we have to go deeper, we can go deeper. But I think Tucker and one of the, one of the difficulties you're trying to track this down right now is you have like the police union and then you get the fire folks. But then it's like with the municipal employees with like the road crews and the public works, it's like a different union. So we're trying to track down the right person. And with that, we will break for the rest of the afternoon to keep going over the drafts on things